Arlette, thank you. John.
With us now, CNN political commentator Alyssa Farah Griffin, the former White House communications director during President Trump's first term. And Alyssa, first off, I think we can dispense fairly quickly with the obvious headline. President Trump, enormous power within his own party when he endorses, yes?
Yes, he's absolutely the dominant force when it comes to the Republican base and Republican primaries. He has a much shakier record, though, when it comes to picking primary candidates who can go on to win a general election. I want to remind you of a few names we may be too old to remember. Kari Lake, Doug Mastriano, Blake Masters, Mehmet Oz, Herschel Walker, Adam Laxalt, Tudor Dixon. I worry Ken Paxton might be the next name on that list. This is not who the party wanted. It's not who Senate leadership wanted. It's not who Texas Republicans, I think, wanted.
All right, we'll come back to Ken Paxton in a second. Politico has a quote. Joshua Burns in the Playbook this morning has some reporting speaking to a Republican Senate campaign official who said the so-called victories over the last couple of weeks are just a mirage. They are self-owns. We're not actually beating Democrats, and we're not actually advancing legislation. Instead, gas is up 45% due to our actions and the president's decision to go to war with Iran. He's focused on the ballroom. He's announced a $1.8 billion restitution fund with zero details or congressional authority to do so. It's just crazy, and that's from a Republican.
Yeah, it might be Bill Cassidy under a different name right now who seems unleashed. But listen, it is a bad moment for Republicans heading into the midterms. And the president, while he can claim objective victory in defeating Thomas Massie, the party's in much shakier footing. Because think of this Texas race. So now you have Ken Paxton, who's much harder to beat Tallarico. Now, I'm still a little skeptical that Dems can turn Texas blue. But think of the places that Republicans want to be spending money. North Carolina, Maine, Georgia, races that are really must win for Republicans. Now resources are going to have to be diverted to Texas because this is way more competitive than John Cornyn, the number 2 in the Senate, one of the most beloved Republicans who's loved statewide. That would have been the obvious place to go, but Donald Trump likes to Donald Trump.
Oh, by the way, John Cornyn going to raise a fortune also.
Yes.
All right, let's do some political role play here. You, of course, were White House communications director. You know the president well. I want you to play the role of the president, right? So I'm an advisor. I come and say, hey, Mr. President, if you endorse Ken Paxton, he's going to have a worse chance to win in November. The president says,
yeah, but he was with me after January 6th. Cornyn wasn't really with me after January 6th. And then I would add, he might actually tell that advisor, okay, I'll probably endorse Cornyn. And then later he's going to find out over tweet that it's Ken Paxton. I experienced that many times. So listen, this comes down to loyalty. It comes down to who was truly with me. He feels like he's been betrayed in the past by people who were shaky. That's why he went after people like Bill Cassidy. But he just made the midterms a lot harder for the party, but also for himself. He's going to have to face oversight.
More role play here. An advisor comes in and says, hey, Mr. President, gas prices are up to a wartime high or near wartime high of $4.56. You shouldn't call it peanuts.
Fake news. The gas prices aren't up. I think this is an information gap with the president. I'm not convinced that he's getting real economic data about how much this war is hurting Americans. I'm not convinced that he's seeing Harry Enton's data about how unpopular the Iran war is. He would be trying to sell this war harder if he really had the information of how unpopular it is.
He's not aware of the gas prices?
Listen, I think that he watches his Fox News. He gets an idea of how things are, but I think he really thinks the country's with him on Iran, and he thinks that he's going to be able to fix this by summertime. I think the rest of us are a lot more skeptical.
It's a 30% approval.
It's yes, and you're talking about $5 and $6 a gallon going into summer travel. I mean, it's the worst place that Republicans want to be heading into the midterms.
Well, Alyssa Farah Griffin, thank you very much. Appreciate your help and your role.